cappuccino.
Hello,
Hi.
how are you?
Here we are in the cabin, and it is super spacious. How you going? Andy here from Andy's World Journeys. Today's video is going to be something a little bit different. If you've been following my vlogs this year, you'll know I've been doing a little thing I called Dakar to Dakar. On this 3-month trip that I took earlier in the year, I took a total of 10 flights. Now out of those 10 flights, 7 of those were booked via frequent flyer points. Some with Velocity, most of them with Velocity, and a couple of them through Qantas Frequent Flyer points. Out of those 7 flights, 4 of those were business class. I travelled Singapore Airlines, Qatar Airways, Emirates and Etihad. So I've had a lot of questions about how was I able to travel business class on those flights. And people are quite surprised when I say that I used flyer points for all of those. So I thought it would be a good idea to make a bit of a video on how I took 4 business class flights in 2023 on frequent flyer points. Can't stop smiling. What can I say? Before we start this video in earnest, don't forget to like and subscribe because it helps the channel to grow and I really appreciate it. The first business class flight of the year was Adelaide to Singapore on Singapore Airlines, which I booked through Velocity points. For a total of just over 50,000 points, and the tax of $99, I managed to get all the way from Adelaide to Singapore, which is a flight of around 7 hours. I really wanted to try Singapore Airlines business class, and I looked for a flight from Melbourne to Singapore, but I couldn't find any through Velocity that had business class seats available. So I did a bit of shopping around, and I found on the dates that I wanted one from Adelaide to Singapore that did have business class seats available, and in fact was a few thousand points less than Melbourne to Singapore. I've been building up my Velocity points balance now for a number of years, so I had enough points for the flights I wanted to take. Booking through Velocity or Qantas Frequent Flyer, you generally, if you're booking on an airline that isn't Virgin or Qantas, once you've actually made the booking, you get your booking number and you manage the booking through, for example, the Singapore Airlines website by putting in your booking reference. That way I was able to choose the seat. Personally, I always prefer to travel on the window, and I'm very happy to say that I think pretty much every flight that I have taken in 2023 I was seated at the window. It certainly helps for making the vlog. Singapore Airlines were fantastic. It could have possibly been the best flight of the 4, but to be honest with you, it's really hard to split them because they were all really top notch as far as I'm concerned, and I don't travel business class as a rule, but as far as I was concerned, they were all great. I took 2 flights on Qatar Airways. One was economy and one was business class. Now the economy flight, which was from Cairo to Doha, was booked through Qantas Frequent Flyer points. In contrast to Velocity, the Qantas Frequent Flyer program is quite tricky, and you end up paying a lot more tax, I felt, than with Velocity. And I couldn't make this particular booking without making a phone call. A lot of your departure points or destinations don't necessarily pop up as options when you are searching on the Qantas Frequent Flyer site. So you end up having to make a phone call, which can take a lot longer, and they will charge you an extra fee of 6,000 or 7,500 depending on the flight, extra frequent flyer points for making the booking that way. It's annoying. There are a couple of little ways around it. For example, it's annoying, but there are a couple of ways around it a little bit, and I'll talk about that when I get to the Emirates flight. After securing the booking from Cairo to Doha, I then had to make my booking from Doha to Istanbul, which I was able to do only a few weeks before the flight on the Velocity website, which was great. And that was 38,000 points but I think I bumped it up to 40 or 41,000 because when you do that, when you add a few extra points, they will reduce the tax. Qatar Airways have a sort of a reputation as being the world's best airline. It was only a three and a half hour flight. I thought it was really solid and I didn't have any cause to complain. Was it the best flight I've ever taken in my life? No, but it was only a short flight and you don't expect the full works, even in business class, on a shorter flight. The third business class flight was booked on Qantas Frequent Flyer points, 75,000 points, and a hefty whack of tax, which I think was between 600 and 700 Australian dollars, so 400-500 USD. And that was from Dakar in Senegal to Dubai as I made my way home. If you go to the Qantas Frequent Flyer website, if you try to enter Dakar as your departure point in your standard frequent flyer booking on the Qantas Frequent Flyer website, it will not appear. What I did was, in 2022 when I made the booking, I was taking a flight from Melbourne to Sydney. I chose the multi-city booking in the Qantas Frequent Flyer. And on the first line, on my first flight, and you can enter, I don't know how many flights you can do, but you can enter multiple flights. I put in Melbourne to Sydney, and I took that flight in 2022. On the second line, I put in Dakar to Dubai, and Dakar appeared on the second line. It wouldn't appear on the first line, but it will appear on the second, as will a number of departure points or destinations that, for some reason, Qantas are trying to prevent you booking through the standard procedure. This way, I avoided extra fees by making the phone call, and I saved a lot of time, and I got the flight that I wanted. Dakar to Dubai, 75,000 points, 600-700 Australian dollars in tax, which was by far the most I paid in tax, and Bob's your uncle. That flight, even though it was on an older Boeing 777, I was really happy with, even though it had a configuration that had 2-3-2. I found the way that they'd done the seat gave you still a lot of privacy, even though I had a neighbour, and the service was very, very warm and friendly and helpful. The final flight was 104,000 points plus tax, which I think was $200 or $300, and I was taking Etihad from Abu Dhabi back to Melbourne. I booked that not quite last because I booked the Qatar flights while I was actually on my journey, but I had to wait until I'd saved up all those points, and when I had, I was very happy to get business class all the way home because it's generally a 13-14 hour flight, although we had a tailwind and it was only a little over 12 hours on this occasion. Etihad and Singapore, I'd say, were the best two of the experiences, but I could only go based on the experiences that I had on the day, and to be honest with you, there wasn't a lot of difference between the quality. Yeah, the Emirates flight, for example, from Dakar to Dubai was a really, really good flight, and I was very, very happy with it. Now, how did I save up all these points? Well, there are many ways, and you can see my video on how to use flybys, etc. to boost your velocity balance. Velocity you can also, by shopping at 7-Eleven, you get points there. Qantas Frequent Flyer have a whole raft of places you can go. BP petrol station, for example, where you can get extra frequent flyer points. And of course, credit card, spending on credit cards. A lot of credit cards, if they're frequent flyer credit cards, will give you a whole lump sum of points just by taking out the credit card and spending a certain amount in the first 3 months. Flybys with Velocity is a great little partnership, and to put it in perspective, come the end of 2023, I probably will just about have saved enough points, and I only came home at the very end of April, so from May to December, enough points to get me another business class flight from or to Abu Dhabi on Etihad. So yeah, I'll have about 100,000, just over 100,000 points come the end of 2023, and I came back with basically 0 points. So it can be that easy and that quick to accumulate points. If you're looking for a credit card that will give you points for spending and bonus point offers as well, pointhacks.com.au are a fantastic website that will basically list all the credit cards available for Australians to buy. Thank you very much for joining me on this vlog. I hope I've shown you how business class travel with points is actually not as hard as you might think it is. And my advice is to go, and if you're living in Australia, go and open up a Velocity account and start cashing in your Flybuys points. Make sure you join Flybuys. They are useful in so many stores now: Coles, Bunnings, Officeworks, Target, and plenty more. And that's a great way you convert those points into Velocity points. Before you know it, you could be traveling business class for your everyday spending. Personally, I prefer Velocity over Qantas. I feel like the Qantas Frequent Flyer program is just not what it was, and it's a lot harder to find the flights that you're looking for via Qantas Frequent Flyer as well. But they are still a half decent option, especially if you're looking for domestic travel around Australia. Thank you for joining me in this vlog. Hopefully it was useful to someone out there. Take care wherever you are in the world, and may the journey never end.